say by the vast majority, are people just trying to get from point A to point B.
Yep.
So people getting from home to work, work to home to uni, this sort of stuff. So,
What about the lycra-clad militant bicyclists?
well, there are large groups of lycra-clad cyclists out getting some exercise, and that's probably a really good thing, and it should be encouraged. And my experience is that most times when there's large groups of cyclists out on the road, they do ride safely, they do obey the laws, and they're generally riding very early in the morning when when most people are still in bed. So they're not using the roads at peak hour, basically.
Yep.
Now, one thing I did want to say about this, Steve, and you talked about it a fair bit, that there's a fair bit of conflict I happen. You just read out a couple of tweets about people saying shared paths are, they get scared by cyclists racing through and showing really, really antisocial behaviour.
Mary, who's elderly with her husband walking across Victoria Bridge, gets abused by a cyclist who hurls past very fast because they didn't move out the way quick enough.
That's right, and that's not acceptable. I mean, we've all got to share, particularly cyclists and pedestrians. We're really, as two classes of city users, we're on the losing end compared to the amount of funding and space that's given over to private motor vehicle use. One of the things that I wanted to say here, Steve, is that rather than, the real issue here is that we're being encouraged more and more to cycle, and that's a really good thing. We want people to get out on bikes. We want people to ride. We want people to get fit and healthy and save some money. You just had a story then in the news bulletin about how our medical profession is finding it more and more difficult to deal with morbidly obese patients.
Yep.
That's becoming that is an epidemic. Everything that we can do to get people out walking and get people out cycling needs to be done. Now, who's really dropping the ball here, Steve, I think, is our councils and our state government. And I say that because, although at high level they say, yep, we want to encourage cycling, yes, we want these targets for cycling, when it actually comes to spending the dollar, money isn't spent on really good, high-quality, world-class cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. And that's where the problem is. If you have a look at any of these areas, and the caller that you had this morning who was abused by the militant lycra-clad louts, as he referred to them to.
I think that was my phrase. But anyway, yeah.
That was your editorial?
Correct.
The section of road that he's talking about there is that is considered the main bicycle route in that area, but there's nothing there except a white painted line which, on several sections along it, cars are allowed to park in, and they call that a bike lane and call that safe for cyclists. And that's the same situation, particularly through Brisbane. There's just, we'll paint a bit of paint on the road and say, here you go, cyclists, that's where you need to ride. Cyclists ride there, there's conflict.
I've had a couple of cyclist mates tell me that when you do that, it's also the roughest, most poorly maintained part of the road that in some cases is dangerous, apparently.
Absolutely, it is very dangerous. And what happens is cars come along and expect cyclists to be over there, and cyclists think, well, I can't be over there because there's cars parked there, or people opening their doors, and I'm going to get what's commonly referred to as doored, where someone opens up the door and cleans up a cyclist.
I'm picturing that what will happen very clearly.
And so the problem is, cyclists are thinking, well, it's completely unsafe for me to ride in that, in that really useless piece of infrastructure, what the council calls infrastructure. But the car driver's thinking, well, why are you riding in the middle of the road? You've got a perfectly good piece of infrastructure over there. Just to give you an example, there's a...
Very briefly, Aaron, because I've got a lot of calls on this. I'll take some more.
I'll give you just one example. Over on the north side here, we were supposed to have a bike lane that went from the Kedron Brook bike path all the way into the CBD. It's been on the books for something like 6 or 8 years now. It's never received funding. They've built Airport Link. There's a bike path already built through there. It's been closed off. Nobody knows why, and the signs say, cyclists ride on Bowen Bridge Road.
Point taken. All right.
I kid you not, I can send you a photo. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Aaron. Call any time. Aaron Ball from the Brisbane Bicycle Users Group. Tanya from Burpengary. What are you hearing, Tanya? Morning to you.